Hey, folks, it's going to be quick because I got to be downstairs, but thank you very much for being here. This morning, the deal that I first put forward last May for the Middle East has finally come to fruition. The ceasefire has gone into effect in Gaza, and today we're seeing hostages being released. Three Israeli women held against their will in the dark tunnels for 470 days. Four more women will be released in 7 days, three additional hostages every 7 days thereafter, including at least two American citizens in this first phase. We pray for them and their families, for they're going to be a long recovery ahead. By the 16th day of the deal, talks will begin in the second phase. This phase includes the release of Israeli soldiers and a permanent end of the war without Hamas in power or able to threaten Israel. Hundreds of trucks are entering Gaza as I speak. They're carrying assistance for civilians who suffered enormously from the war that Hamas started on October 7th, 2023, nearly 15 months ago. Today alone, we anticipate several hundred trucks will enter the Gaza Strip as I'm speaking. And after so much pain, destruction, and loss of life, today the guns in Gaza have gone silent. This was the deal that I outlined for the world back in May 31st. Many of you covered it at the time. It was endorsed overwhelmingly by folks around the world, including the UN Security Council, unanimously endorsed the deal and I developed in coordination with Egypt, Qatar, and Israel. I've worked in foreign policy for decades, and this is one of the toughest negotiations I've been part of. Many of you who follow these negotiations will attest that the road to this deal has been not easy at all and a long road. But we've reached this point today because of the pressure Israel built on Hamas, backed by the United States. Some said my policy of a firm support for Israel was relentlessly pursuing diplomacy, risked drawing America into a wider war in the region. I listened to those voices, many of whom I respected a great deal, but I concluded abandoning the course I was on would not have led us to the ceasefire we're seeing today, but instead it would have risked the wider war in the region that so many feared. Now the region has been fundamentally transformed. Hamas's longtime leader, Sinwar, is dead. Hamas sponsors in the Middle East have been badly weakened by Israel, backed by the United States. Hezbollah, one of Hamas's biggest backers, was significantly weakened on the battlefield and its leadership was destroyed. Even as we worked for diplomatic solutions in Lebanon, we provided ongoing assistance and supported Israel's military campaign against Hezbollah, including its efforts to take out the terror infrastructure along the border between Israel and Lebanon. Israel's campaign was extremely successful, so much so that by the end of November, the United States had brokered a ceasefire in Lebanon. Hezbollah did what it said it would never do. It cut its deal and abandoned Hamas. And today, in Lebanon, there's finally a new president and prime minister, both of whom support a sovereign Lebanon without Hezbollah running the show or playing any part in it. The Assad regime next door in Syria is gone, removing Iran's ready access to Lebanon. Iran is in the weakest position in decades after the U.S. military helped defend Israel from Iranian missiles and supported Israel's military response inside Iran. Just look across the region. In Lebanon, there's an opportunity for a future free from the grip of Hezbollah. In Syria, a future free from the tyranny of Assad. For the Palestinian people, a credible path to a state of their own. And for the region and the future normalization and integration of Israel with all its Arab neighbors, including Saudi Arabia, who I've spoken with. We've had many difficult days since Hamas began this terrible war. We've encountered roadblocks and setbacks, but we haven't given up. And a special thanks to my team, particularly Brett McGurk, who many of you know, who spent weeks and stop this deal. Those months out of the and the release of hostages is a result of a principled and effective policy that we presided over for months. And we got here without a wider war in the Middle East than many predicted. And now it falls on the next administration to help implement this deal. I was pleased to have our team speak as one voice in the final days. It was both necessary and effective and unprecedented. But success is going to require persistence. and continuing support for our friends in the region and the belief in diplomacy backed by deterrence. So, as we reflect on the news from Gaza today, we also remember all the victims of this war. We're mindful. We're mindful that the pursuit of a lasting peace, while never easy or quick, must always be our calling. So thank you all for listening. May God bless you all. May God protect our troops. I'm looking forward to this deal being fully implemented. And I'm sorry I'm not going to take any questions now because I'm waiting. There's a whole congregation waiting for me. And I'm sure the remainder of the day I'll have an opportunity to speak with you. Thank you very much.
Anything about the condition of the hostages that were released today and the others?
Yes, I've just got a call saying the three are released into Gaza, two the out of the hands of their captors, and they appear to be in good health. But it's early to tell. They may be across the border out of the Gaza Strip into Israel now. I'm not certain. Thank you.
Sir, any concerns about Hamas regrouping?
No,
Will you remain involved in the deal as it moves forward?
no way out. Proud of the deal.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm gonna hold here until we move.
This is a brilliant woman. This is a woman who has incredible capacity. And I stood there with her watching the Senate vote, and I thought to myself, she's going to change things. It makes a difference. And it sends a message to every young Black woman in America. I can do that. I can do what she can do. She is America. And look at the look on her face in that picture. The same one I had. It's done. 53 yes, 47 no's. She passed. And I felt great pride. I was determined that we had to do two things. One was unite our allies around the world because the predecessor had just broken everything up. And I wanted very much to figure out how I get in touch with all those world leaders, all of whom I knew because I've been around a long time. Could we bring back this solidarity with the United States and NATO and other parts of the world? The second thought I had, I was intent on changing the dynamic of the way we did our economy. Instead of trickle-down economics, my dad used to say, nothing ever trickled down his kitchen table. I wanted to make sure ordinary people had a shot. I was hoping that as we did that, my dad'd be proud. No American president ever gone into a war zone without the military guarding him. But I was determined to show up in Kyiv to let the world know we supported the Ukrainian people against Russian aggression. We were on a multi-hour ride into Kyiv. We couldn't fly in. We were afraid to get shot down. We went in on a train. It's a long time getting in. And the concern of Secret Service was they were going to know we were here, that someone's going to do something to take out the train. But they didn't. I thought it was a show of support and resolve on the part of the United States of America. We are not leaving Ukraine to be ravaged by the Russians. That look in my face there is one of absolute determination. We weren't turning around. No better way to show it than for American president to get on a train on a multi-hour ride to say, we're with you. The infrastructure law we passed is the most comprehensive attempt to rebuild America in American history. I want to make it clear. It wasn't just about Democrats getting benefited or blue states. I want to make sure everybody in America benefits from it because we're all Americans. And so this over $1 trillion bill over the next 10 years, more red states are benefiting than blue states. I knew when we passed these major pieces of legislation They wouldn't come to fruition from the first administration because it takes time to build these bridges. It's going to increase commerce. It's going to increase economic growth. It's going to increase the ability of people to be with one another. This woman standing next to me, her name is Shiana, a young woman. Her generation is going to live or die based upon what we do over the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years dealing with climate. From the time I got elected to the United States Senate, I worked on climate change. I thought that the only really existential threat to humanity is a change in climate. When we finally got the bill passed, I almost wish it would call the Inflation Reduction Act. It provided for over $368 billion to deal with climate change, which is a threat to all humanity. And we got the legislation passed. It gave me such hope that we're going to be able to continue to make progress, and we are. I've committed that 30% of all federal lands and waters are going to be set aside permanently, so no development is allowed. When I leave office shortly, I'm not walking away from this issue. I'm going to be deeply involved in making sure we continue the fight. The PACT Act is all about taking care of veterans, and it's the most significant thing we've done for veterans in a long, long time. I got in trouble years ago as a young senator saying we had only one sacred obligation as a nation, those we send into harm's way, and care for them and their families when they come home. Her daddy was a victim of toxic waste coming off of these burn pits where he was stationed, just like my son, Bo. Spent a year in Iraq near one of those burn pits, ended up with stage 4 glioblastoma. And I wanted her to know, of all the people there, the one who I thought was going to get the greatest benefit from what we did was her. So she's one of thousands of young children who are going to have part of their college paid for, part of their benefits cared for, because of the service of their father or their mother. It wasn't available before if you couldn't prove that death was the consequence of what happened. I have here, she gave me a little note. She said, "Thank you, Mr. President, for being so nice to us." I have it on my desk. Look, the United States invented these computer chips. They're about the size of my little finger, the tip of my little finger. They have control of everything from cell phones to automobiles to weapon systems and the like. We invented them. We had 40% of the market. And then corporate America decided it's best to go to where cheapest labor was. And I was determined to bring it back home. We invented these chips. So I got in a plane and flew to South Korea, trying to convince Samsung that they should invest in chips in the United States. And the end result is we got billions of dollars committed to build these chip factories here in America. And secondly, they're going to increase the economic growth in America significantly. The people work in those chip factories. They're going to make over $102,000 a year on average. They don't need a college degree. It's going to revolutionize communities all across America. It's not only the construction of the facility, which increases the need for skilled workers to build them, it also means once that's done, there's going to be a permanent workforce of thousands of people all across America making serious money. And when that happens, guess what else happens? More barbershops, beauty parlors, drugstores, churches, and communities grow around them. We provided more money for red states to build these than blue states. I think it's one of the most important things I was able to do. When I walked the picket line to support the UAW, I wasn't even thinking I was the first president. I did that as a senator. I did those things as a vice president. It didn't even dawn on me that the president's never done this before. But I wanted to make it clear that the middle class built this country and unions built the middle class. And it was critically important to me to demonstrate my support, in this case, for the UAW. They got their contract. They're making American automobiles. We're coming back. You know, I got a lot of criticism for saying unions are making more money and it's going to cost everybody. Wrong. I asked the Treasury Department to do a study for me. As union wages went up, and they have significantly all across America, the study showed everybody's wages go up. So I make no apologies. I'm the most pro-union president in American history. I'm proud of that. And I'm really proud of the union movement in America. Well, this is a picture of me being handed a ball by my cousin from Ireland, Rob. He and his brother were two of the best players in the Irish club, and it was St. Patrick's Day. But what it meant to me was more than that. It was a tie to the past. It was our roots, the roots of my family. when we went to Ireland and they did this extensive genealogy, my family in Ireland, the Blewitts are from Mayo, and the other half from Louth, which is on the Irish Sea, the Finnegans. The ball meant to me more than just the game. Hopefully, he was consistent, never gave up, wanted to make sure that Black Americans knew how they were being left out in history. When the Emancipation Proclamation was passed, there's a whole group of African Americans in West Texas didn't have any idea of what happened. This was a day that made it known to them. Celebrate the fact that this occurred. We all are created equal and deserve to be treated equally throughout our lives. I wanted to make sure we knew that we were writing history, making sure we were not erasing it. We've never lived up to this ideal, but we've never walked away from it. Until you lose a part of your family, you don't really appreciate what it means when you're wondering whether or not you're ever going to see them again. And these are their family. This is their family. And I felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment, being able to bring their parents home from Russia, being held unfairly. It was a complicated process to get it done. The guy that I've become friends with, Chancellor Schulz of Germany, he made it happen. He had to release a prisoner in Germany in order to get these men released. He met Jill at the Olympics, and he said, "I'm doing this for your husband." I'm reminded that the word of leaders matters. And I think building personal relationship with world leaders matters. I'm indebted to the Chancellor for what he did, but it mattered. We did it for them. They did it for us. That's what alliances are about. But look at the looks on their faces. To see them come home, to know that they came back, to know that they were going to be okay, mattered a great deal to me. I remember taking off my lapel pin and giving it to one of them who saying, "Welcome home." To quote my dad, he said, "Joey, family's the beginning, the middle, and end. Uniting families matters." I just felt so good about it. I felt a great deal of pride and a great deal of thanks to the Germans for releasing that prisoner. A lot of emotions that day. Standing with my son Hunter and my daughter Ashley and Jill. And the most searing one was my son Bo wasn't there. He was someone I relied upon. He was someone who really someday should have been taking that office, not me. I had my hand on the family Bible that's been around since the late 1800s. And all I could think about was, I just hope he was looking down. We're the first nation in the world built on an idea. The idea was we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal. That's what we believe. I was asked by Xi Jinping when I spent 80 hours alone with him. And we're in the Tibetan Plateau, and he turned to me and he said, "Can you define America for me?" I said, "Yes, one word, possibilities. We're a nation of possibilities." That's who we are. That's what we never gave up on.
Good afternoon, friends. It is my high honor to welcome our next speaker, a man whom, without all the success and progress American cities have made over the last 4 years, simply would not be possible. American mayors could ask for no better friend and partner than the 46th President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden. It's easy now. It's easy now as cities are thriving to forget just how tough a spot we were all in just 4 years ago. It was a real-life nightmare. The most disruptive global event in our lifetimes had decimated our revenues, erased millions of jobs overnight, and taken far too many lives. American mayors had a partner. Working hand in hand, President Biden led the most productive 4 years for American cities in our history. He delivered the American Rescue Plan that brought us back from the brink. He then helped us catapult ahead with the bipartisan infrastructure law. He made history's greatest investment in the fight against climate change in the Inflation Reduction Act. And among many other achievements, he set in motion a great renaissance of American manufacturing with the CHIPS and Science Act. It is a record that will not only stand the test of time, but had profound, tangible benefits for the people we serve and the cities we love. Today, our cities are vibrant and brimming with optimism. And for that, we cannot thank you enough for your devoted leadership. Indeed, thank you is not enough. That's why today I'm proud to announce that we are taking the very rare step of presenting to President Joe Biden the United States Conference of Mayors Award for Distinguished Public Service. This is our highest honor, and there's no more fitting recipient than President Biden. Mr. President, your legacy of achievement and support for the working people of this country will forever be celebrated. On behalf of America's mayors, we honor you and thank you for your service and for your friendship. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden.
Hello. Mayor Gaylord, thank you very much from Columbus, Ohio, for your leadership of this conference. Please have a seat if you have one. Thank you, Tom Cochran, for your remarkable stewardship of the U.S. Conference of Mayors for decades. I want to give a special thanks to his wife, Clarita, who I just met. She's running around here, feeling after she broke her hip. Are you doing well? Anyway, Tom, you and I have something in common. We both married way above our station. To my hometown mayor, John Carney. John, where are you? Out there? Wilmington, Delaware. Thank you, John. This guy's a true public servant. He just finished 8 years as a great governor and then decided to run for mayor. A special thanks to another great friend, the mayor of my second home, Scranton, Pennsylvania, Paige Cognotti. Paige. It's an honor to receive this award. As I measure the significance of the award based on the character and the consequences of the organization bestowing the award. The U.S. Conference of Mayors is an organization of character and consequence. And thanks to all of you for your partnership and the progress we made together these 4 years. I must say, the big reason we got so much done is because all former mayors who served in my administration, Steve Benjamin, Pete Buttigieg, Marcia Fudge, Keisha Lance Bottom, Mitch Landrieu, Tom Vilsack, Marty Walsh, and thanks to Tom Perez, a guy like me who has been my point person for all of this, but he's a county guy. That's tougher, man. I don't know, man. This is one of the last events that I'll be doing as president. And the reason I chose to be here is because of the first thing that I did as president was to speak to this conference. You know, as many of you know, maybe you weren't here then, but many of you know, I started my career as a local councilman. Only ran for the Senate because it's too damn hard being a local councilman. You know, people know where you live. They think you can solve every problem. They think you have more money than you do and more power than you do. You're in the front lines answering key questions of their lives. Is my neighborhood safe? My kid going to have the good fortune to be here in his hometown? Will there be jobs here? So many other questions. Met 4 years ago, the economy was reeling. 4 years later, our nation and our cities emerged stronger than we were when we entered the crisis. I come here today for a couple reasons. First, my administration released a report. It all started with the American Rescue Plan, one of the most significant recovery packages in our history, to get us out of the immediate crisis of the pandemic and save thousands of lives. One of the most important decisions I made was to send money directly to you. Directly to you. I'm a local official. Governors are good guys and women, but when you send it to state legislators, they divide it up before it gets to you. It goes directly to you when I do it. So you control the outcome. Then we passed the Invest in America Act. That's launching a new era of American possibilities. One of the greatest modernizations of infrastructure in our history we passed. New roads, bridges, clean water, affordable high-speed internet for every American. Now, each of you, because there's so many examples of the projects in your community, there's thousands of them. We also made the biggest investment in fighting climate change ever in the history of the world, not just America, because of you. And I think one thing we've all changed together, when I use the word here climate, I think jobs. I think jobs when I hear climate. We're creating hundreds of thousands of good-paying, clean energy jobs. We've proven you don't have to choose between protecting the environment and growing the economy. You're doing both. We have to keep pushing forward, push forward faster. There's no time to waste. I'm with you and your governors to make the devastating hurricanes and floods and tornadoes and wildfires, like the catastrophic fires and wildfires in California. Together, we push Congress for extra disaster relief funding, to rebuild homes and businesses across the Carolinas, to cover the full cost of replacing the collapsed Key Bridge in Baltimore, and so much more. At the same time, we work with you to upgrade the power grids, plant millions of trees, build resilient communities to withstand extreme weather. Not only build, but to build back better than before. Build back better. We also made the most significant investment in science and innovation. America invented the semiconductor. Now we're bringing those chip factories back home to America where they belong. I've stood with you in Columbus, Syracuse, Phoenix, and many more fields of dreams where these fabs, these massive new factories the size of several football fields are being built. And as I speak, you're going to create at least 125,000 good-paying jobs. And the jobs in these fabs are going to pay over $100,000 a year, and you don't need a college degree. You don't have to move from your hometown. You can stay where you are. If I could pause a minute, you know what's going to happen as well? When you build these factories, they're going to have to build more barbershops, beauty salons. I'm not joking. They're going to build grocery stores. They're going to build drugstores. It grows communities in a big way. We will soon be the only economy in the world to have all 5 of the top chip companies operating in America, creating thousands of jobs. And for the first time in decades, these new factories are producing the most advanced chips right here in America. These aren't just fabs, these investments are creating opportunities for entire communities, for small business, creating even more jobs, and so much more. I've kept my commitment to be president for all America, whether you voted for me or not. In fact, studies show my programs have delivered more for red states than blue states. The results are clear. 16.6 million new jobs, the lowest average unemployment rate for 50 years. A record 21 million new applications to start new businesses. And every one of those applications is an act of hope in your communities. Wages are up, inflation is down, and we passed the most significant gun safety law in 30 years. We're slashing overdose deaths by 26% last year. You did it faster than ever, and seizing record amounts of fentanyl, making life-saving Narcan available over the counter. Violent crime is now at a 50-year low because of you. The bottom line, you've produced an incredible 4 years. So much we got done together. It'll take time to see and feel, though. But the seeds have been planted, will grow and they'll bloom for decades to come, and none of it could have happened without all of you. And that's not hyperbole, none of it. You know, we're not finished yet. Earlier today, I announced 3 major priorities that mark important progress in our country. First, after fighting Big Pharma for decades as a senator and then vice president as president, we finally beat Big Pharma. Instead of paying $400 a month for insulin, seniors now pay $35 a month. But that wasn't the only thing that happened when we passed the bill. Starting this month, the total prescription drug cost for seniors is capped at $2,000 no matter how expensive their drugs are. Even expensive cancer drugs that cost $10,000, $12,000, $14,000, they're not going to have to pay more than $2,000 a year. And finally, we gave Medicare the power to negotiate lower drug prices like the VA has been able to do for veterans all along. These negotiations are being implemented in phases. The first phase, negotiated lower prices for the 10 most expensive drugs for seniors, covering drugs for blood clots and so much more. And just this morning, I announced the next phase, the next 15 drugs subject to negotiations. Drugs that will treat cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and so much more, including Ozempic. Hard to say. But it really is an incredible drug. These reforms just don't save seniors money. They save the American taxpayer $160 billion. The taxpayer over the next decade. Why? That $160 billion in Medicare is saving for negotiating lower drug prices in Big Pharma doesn't have to be paid out by the government. $160 billion. Second, just over 100 years ago, a pioneering group of women proposed the Equal Rights Amendment to enshrine the principles of gender equality in our Constitution. Throughout my career, I've been clear. No one should be discriminated against based on their sex. And in order for the amendment to be ratified, it requires 3/4 of the states to ratify it. That benchmark was passed when Virginia ratified the ERA a few years ago. Today, I affirm the Equal Rights Amendment to have cleared all the necessary hurdles to be added to the U.S. Constitution now. The Equal Rights Amendment is the law of the land now. It's the 28th Amendment to the Constitution now. I consulted dozens of constitutional scholars to make sure there was all within the power to do this. And the fact is, we did. And third, our cities are places for a second chance. Earlier today, I commuted the sentence of nearly 2,500 convicted nonviolent drug offenders. These individuals are serving disproportionately long and harsh sentences compared to the sentence they would receive had they committed the crime today. After spending too long behind bars, these individuals will soon be reunited with their families and communities. With this action, I make no apology. I've issued more individual pardon and commutation than any president in U.S. history. There is more work to do, but when we allow our justice system to be a place of both accountability and mercy, it strengthens our cities and our nation as well, in my view. Let me close with this. Serving as your president has been the honor of my life. When my term in office is ending, the work continues. Your work continues. My farewell address 2 days ago, I talked how each of us must be guardians of democracy to restore the strength of our institutions of democracy. The presidency, the Congress, the courts, all have minimum requirements under the law to deal with those safeguards. And a free and independent press, and yes, local governments. The strength of our institutions depends on the character of leaders like you. In our time together, I'm forever thankful to have seen the strength, your strength and your character. And we need it now more than ever. The magic of America has been everyone has a fair shot. Everyone is determined to be able to be treated with dignity. No guarantee, just a fair shot. I've always believed America can be defined in one word. I remember being in the Tibetan plateau with Xi Jinping. I've met with him for over 90 hours alone. Traveled 17,000 miles with him. Very significant differences. He looked at me and he said, "Can you define America for me?" And I said in one word, possibilities. We're the only nation in the world. Only nation in the world that's come out of every crisis we've ever gone in stronger than we went in. Only one. Look at the history. We're the only nation in the world that believes when we act together, there's not a damn thing we can't do. Only in America that anything is possible. You just have to remember who we are. We're the United States of America. Nothing is beyond our capacity when we do it together and act together. God bless you all. Keep working together. We need you, we need you, we need you, we need you. And may God protect our troops. Thank you so very much.
Distinguished guests, General Brown.
Well, good afternoon. That is a very, very tough act to follow. Now, today we gather to honor and say farewell to our Commander-in-Chief, a man who has dedicated his life in service of our nation, a man who for over 50 years has fought for those who serve in uniform, fought to prepare our military for the challenges they face defending our nation, whether forward deployed or back at home. He fought as a senator from Delaware to ensure our service members, veterans, and their families were taken care of. He fought as vice president for stronger Veterans Affairs programs and more support for service members transitioning back to civilian life. And as our president, he continued to fight, lead our nation through an uncertain and dynamic geostrategic environment, while strengthening our force to protect our future. Mr. President, Dr. Biden, Madam Vice President, Commissioner Inhofe, government and elected officials, civic leaders, Department of Defense leadership, general flag officers, senior enlisted leaders, and distinguished guests. Welcome, and thank you for being here. President Biden's work with Congress on bipartisan legislation has set our military on a course to confront the threats of tomorrow, to ensure our warfighters are ready when the nation calls. He supported significant investments in shipbuilding to modernize and expand our naval fleet. We are on track to increase the number and lethality of our fighters and bombers and expand our space domain capabilities. We are now on a trajectory to increase long-range fires, implement next-generation combat vehicles, and improve air and missile defense. And generational modernization of U.S. nuclear triad is underway, bolstering our deterrence capabilities. And we're on a pathway has been set to streamline adopting emerging technologies, such as artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and uncrewed systems into our fighting force. Simultaneously, President Biden has worked tirelessly to care for our men and women in uniform and their families, improving the quality of military housing, providing historic pay raises, and implementing new programs to expand the benefits available to all service members. I'd also like to recognize the incredible work of Dr. Joe Biden. She has done what she has done with Joining Forces Initiative, supporting service members, veterans, caregivers, and their families. As our Commander-in-Chief, President Biden has fought for our military time and time again. Today's ceremony is just a small token of our appreciation. So thank you, Mr. President, for all you have done for this nation and its military. Your unwavering commitment to the strengthening of our force and the welfare of our service members, veterans, and families stands as a testament to the deep responsibility you have carried throughout your service. On a personal note, I want to thank you for the trust and confidence you placed in me as the 21st Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It's truly an honor to serve our nation and have this opportunity to lead the Joint Force. Mr. President, your lifetime of selfless service, your unwavering commitment to those that answer our nation's call, and your leadership as our Commander-in-Chief has profoundly shaped our nation. To paraphrase 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7, you have fought the good fight, you have finished the race, and you have kept the faith. On behalf of our 2.1 million men and women in uniform, our military families, and our veterans, thank you, Mr. President, for keeping the faith, and those past and present who defend our great nation. Simply said, thanks for your leadership. May God bless you and your family. May God bless our service members and their families. May God continue to bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, Secretary Austin.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Mr. President, Dr. Biden, Madam Vice President, Mr. Inhofe. Department of Defense leadership, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Armed Forces Farewell Tribute in honor of our 46th president. For more than 5 decades, President Joe Biden has thrown himself into public service. And over the past 4 years, he's secured his place in history as one of our great foreign policy presidents. As Secretary of Defense, I have seen this, and I've seen his leadership up close. He took the oath of office as America faced a moment of great challenge. The COVID pandemic was raging, and our allies and partners feared that America had lost its way. President Biden helped America and the world recover from the pandemic. And he renewed American leadership around the planet. President Biden dramatically strengthened our unmatched global network of allies and partners. He rallied the free world to help Ukraine fight for its freedom after Putin's indefensible invasion. He positioned America to succeed in strategic competition with the People's Republic of China. He orchestrated a new convergence in the Indo-Pacific around a shared vision of security, openness, and prosperity. He reinforced NATO, which is now larger, stronger, and more united than ever. He shored up Israel's security after the vile October 7th terrorist assault by Hamas. He helped defend Israel from outrageous direct attacks by Iran. And he's prevented the Middle East from erupting into an all-out regional war. And he has just secured a ceasefire that will stop the fighting in Gaza, surge more humanitarian aid to suffering Palestinian civilians, and reunite the hostages with their families. In Afghanistan, he ended America's longest war, one that spanned 4 presidents, and he refused to hand it over to one more. And he has always understood that the power of our example counts for more than the example of our power. President Biden showed the world the strength and the resolve that only a democracy can muster. Now, as I said, his leadership is rooted in his decades of expertise. President Biden processes policy at graduate levels. And I learned quickly that whenever I went over to the White House, I needed to be prepared to dive deep on key issues, because inevitably, the president will send a question your way. And he'll ask something that takes it to the next level. He insists on hearing a range of views, and he's not afraid of making the big decisions. And he also has a secret weapon, because he's not just the president, he's also Dr. Jill Biden's husband. America knows Dr. Biden as a great educator and a role model. But at the Department of Defense, we also know that she's a proud daughter of a World War II veteran. And she's a long-time champion of our military families and veterans. Dr. Biden, we are deeply, deeply grateful for your continued leadership of joining forces. Your work increased employment opportunities for military spouses. It improved education for military children. It enhanced military family health and much, much more. And it was great to get to visit Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama with you recently, where we got to see a universal pre-K class and a Department of Defense school up close. Now, our first family is also a military family. President Biden and Dr. Biden know firsthand what our military families carry, both the worry and the pride. And you can see it in their fierce love for our troops. And I've seen it over and over again. I've been there, Mr. President, when you've reached out to grieving families. I've seen you focus your entire being on a service member, a military spouse, or a military child. And by the way, nobody is going to stop Joe Biden from wading into a crowd of troops. He loves to grab a service member's cell phone and call a stunned loved one. And of course, everyone gets a selfie. Mr. President, that's just who you are. You've pushed hard to make life easier for our troops and their families. Base pay for our troops is up almost 10% since you were sworn in. We're expanding access to affordable child care. And we're doing far more to help military spouses excel in their own careers. President Biden has also worked hard with Congress to invest in America's future. The department's budget last year was $100 billion more than in his first year. And that will help keep our United States military the strongest fighting force on earth. Now, President Biden always ends his speeches the same way, with the same 5 words. He always says, "May God protect our troops." And he means every word, every time. Mr. President, it has been an honor to serve with you. And I hope that future presidents and secretaries of defense will enjoy similar relationships of trust, candor, and friendship. Our entire department stands together today. We salute your service to the republic that we defend. And we are deeply, deeply grateful for your love of our troops. Thank you, Mr. President and Dr. Biden. May God bless you and your family, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce one last time the President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Thank you. Every time I'm here, which made me so damn proud to be an American. And most all of you as well. 1% of you are defending 99% of us. We owe you big. Just over 240 years ago, George Washington gave his farewell address to the Continental Army. Still astonished by their victory and by their unity, Washington asked, and I quote, "Who that was not a witness could imagine the men who came from different parts of the continent would instantly become one patriotic band of brothers." That's what you are, one patriotic band of brothers. Vice President Harris, Jill, Doug, Secretary Austin, Secretary Brown, two of the best decisions ever made in my career, by my dad. Service secretaries, members of Congress, and most importantly, this patriotic band of service members before me. Serving as your commander-in-chief has been the greatest honor of my life. While I'm deeply grateful for your thanks and affection, I'm here to thank you. Thank you for your service to our nation and for allowing me to bear witness to your courage, your commitment, your character. As I listened to the choir sing, I thought about it. You all represent what America is: character, honesty, integrity, commitment. Like Washington, it left me astonished, and I mean it. Over the years, I've frequently seen you in action in war zones in Bosnia, Baghdad, Fallujah, Kabul. I was going to bore the hell out of you, but Helmand, Kandahar, and other places. I remember one trip to Afghanistan as vice president. I was at a forward operating base, Wardak Province, which is in eastern Afghanistan. I was asked by a commanding officer to pin a Bronze Star on a soldier for his heroism. A soldier's teammate was hit while driving in a Humvee. This soldier did everything possible to rescue his colleague from the burning flames. But when I went to pin the medal on him, the soldier looked at me and said, "I don't want it. I don't want it. He died. I don't want it." And in that moment, all I could think about was the incredible courage and humility and moral compass that this soldier had, that all of you have. This is not hyperbole. You are simply the greatest fighting force in the history of the world. In the history of the world. That's a fact. That's not hyperbole. That's a fact. And there's never been a time in history when we've asked our military to do so many different things, so many places, all at the same time. And I want to be clear. You've done all these missions with strength, and maybe even importantly, with integrity. When I ask you to end our nation's longest war, it rose to the occasion, evacuating Americans, allies, and our Afghan partners, accomplishing the largest airlift in military history, and ending a war with the same courage that defined American service in Afghanistan for over 20 years. I believe history will reflect it was the right thing to do, but I know it was hard. After decades of losing your brothers and sisters, including the withdrawal, the pain was still real. And it was for me as well. Every day I still carry, every single day. It's my schedule. On the back of the schedule, every single day, at the top since I've been here, it says daily U.S. troops in Afghanistan. U.S. troops have died in Afghanistan. 2,465. Not over 2,000, 2,465. Troops wounded. 20,769. And every day will honor their sacrifice for continuing the mission for which they gave their lives, fighting terrorism, defending our homeland, and protecting the American people. 6 months after that war ended, when Russia began its largest war in Europe since World War II, I asked you to help defend Ukraine. You didn't hesitate. You kept Ukraine in the fight, trained Ukrainian soldiers and pilots, troops, bolstered NATO's eastern flank, and above all, you showed the world America stands up for freedom, stands with our friends. America stands strong with our allies. We never bend down. We bend down to no one, certainly not Putin. And now, nearly 3 years later, Putin has failed to take Kyiv, failed to make large territorial gains, and failed to break NATO. As a matter of fact, when I spoke to him on the phone, he talked about he wanted us to be the Finland of Europe. And I pointed out to him at the time, for real, that you're not only get the Finland of Europe, you're going to get the Finlandization, not of Europe. You're going to see Europe joining NATO, Finland joining NATO, Sweden joining NATO. And America's watch. Dictators do not get to do whatever the hell they want. Then following Hamas's terrorism, October the 7th, I asked you to, excuse my back, by the way. My mother would be very upset. I asked you to deploy to the Middle East. Again, you stepped up, pulling long nights and long deployments to weaken Hamas, to defend Israel against unprecedented attacks on Iran. Imagine had we not. If we don't lead the world, who will lead the world? Who? And twice, you stood up to the attacks by the Houthis in the Red Sea. Last year, I spoke with the women and men aboard the destroyer that took down the first Houthi attacks. It was the USS Carney. And I want you to tell you all what I told them. We owe you. We owe you. And back in May, yesterday I proud to announce the ceasefire, the hostage deal between Israel and Hamas. The road to that deal was not easy. It was 8 months ago I laid down the elements of that deal in May, embraced by countries around the world, because they know we say what we mean, endorsed overwhelmingly by the UN Security Council. It's taken 8 months of nonstop, relentless effort from my administration to get it done. But because of you, all of you standing behind me, because of you, because of so many diplomats and defense professionals, we kept the pressure on Hamas. And we got it done. We got it done. And finally, when I ask you to strengthen America's position in the Pacific, in the middle of all the other conflicts and crises, you said no problem. You kept China in check. Remember when we took office? China was going to overcome the United States economically and politically by 2030. Everybody wrote that, except here in this building. The skies open, the seas free, and our allies close. You established our first trilateral defense partnership with Australia and the United Kingdom, our first trilateral partnership that we said couldn't get done with Japan and the Philippines, and our first trilateral partnership between Japan and South Korea. Remember that? Camp David that said we couldn't do it. It wasn't me. It was America. We did it. That's what America does. People know America's acting out of character. Our nation is so much, and so many others. Our nation has asked so much, so many others as well. Doctors and nurses, helping service members to learn to walk again, eat again, speak again. The National Guard members who dropped everything to help their fellow Americans during the fires and hurricanes. The Marines guarding embassies around the world. The scientists making sure we have an edge over adversaries. Interpreters who make our missions possible. Perhaps most importantly, your families. They sacrifice so much. And I might add, the doctors and nurses. Excuse a point of personal privilege, as used to say in the Senate. Came home I commuted every day. Every single day, over 2,100,000 miles on Amtrak because I lost my family when I first got here. My oldest son one day went home, he was the Attorney General. He said, "Dad, what are you doing Friday?" I said, "What do you want me to do?" He said, "Why don't you pin my bars on?" I said, "What?" He said, "You're married with 2 children." I said, "No, Dad, but someone's got to go." He spent a year in Iraq, won the Bronze Star, Conspicuous Service Medal. But like many others, he was exposed to those burn pits, which were within about half a mile of where he bunked. He had stage 4 glioblastoma like so many other of our folks. And I watched the nurses and the doctors who took care of him for so long. And by the way, I want to take a moment to speak to all military spouses, kids, and parents here today. Most Americans never see the sacrifices that you make every single day. They'll never see all those holidays and birthdays with an empty seat at the dinner table because mom or dad was deployed. They'll never see all the moves you had to make to new states, to new schools, to new jobs. But I see it, and Jill saw it. She made it her life's work. She's done everything big and small. Help military spouses find child care and build their own careers. By hanging photos, employed moms and dads outside classrooms of those National Guard folks. Because on every holiday, every time there's something going on, their moms or dads weren't there, but no one ever mentioned it. She started getting in every classroom in America to put a picture of an employed mom or dad outside the classroom. Even this morning, she held an event for joining forces, an historic White House initiative to support military and veterans' families. Because as a poet John Milton wrote, they also serve who only stand and wait. They also serve only stand and wait. So for the last time as Commander-in-Chief, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you to all the families. We owe you. I've long said as a nation, we have many obligations. But I said we only have one truly sacred obligation. That's to prepare those we send into harm's way and care for them and their families when they come home and when they don't. Over the last 4 years, Kamala and I have worked to make good that obligation. We passed more than 40 bipartisan laws to support you, including something that I felt so strongly about, the passage of the PACT Act. We drafted that law and we passed it. Now it's already helped over 1 million service members and their survivors, their children, their access, everything from college to health care. These people were exposed to toxins. In my generation to Agent Orange, my son's generation to burn pits. But we had to prove that what you had, with your disease, all the brain damage, all the brain cancers, were a direct consequence of those toxins or Agent Orange. But we changed that. I want to publicly thank the 9/11 Commission, all those folks, all those firefighters who were so badly, badly damaged because of the fumes and the toxins associated with the 9/11. And those of you who are the Vietnam generation, finally, all you had to prove is that stuff dropped on you and it didn't cause. They didn't have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt it caused your disease. Just state the fact and you're covered. We've invested over $1 trillion in our defense industry base. In real dollars, that's more than America did in any 4-year period during the Cold War. We also invested record resources to fight the scourge of military suicide. No more calling and saying, my husband needs help. He needs help. You get an answer. We brought veterans homelessness to record lows. Made historic changes in the military justice system, which has reduced the rates of sexual assault for the first time in nearly a decade. We ended the ban on transgender service. We took landmark steps to create more economic opportunities for military spouses. We expanded opportunities for women in combat roles. And I'm proud to have appointed the first woman as a service chief in the history of this country. Clap for that, folks, because she deserves it. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but the women in my step family are a hell of a lot smarter than the men in my family. Look, if there's one thing I hope to take away from today, it's this. This is not hyperbole. You're truly the finest fighting force in the history of the world. That's not hyperbole, it's true. Everything I and others have asked of you, you've done. You've done with honor, commitment, grit, and guts. Let me close with a final request. I say it not as your president or commander-in-chief, I say it as a man who spent 50 years of his life serving his country in a different way. Remember your oath. My son, Major Bo Biden, used to call it home base. That's a set of principles of values that give you light in darkness, that guide you. It's true to the military, it's the best weapons, the best training in the world. We have the most cutting-edge ships, planes, and subs. We have the smartest, most well-trained force on earth. That's all critical. But that alone is not what makes us strong. This is not what brought Washington, this band of brothers together all those years ago. It's our values. I mean it sincerely, it's our values. American values. Our commitment to honor, to integrity, to unity, to protecting and defending not a person or a party or a place, but an idea. Literally unlike, as a student official, I can say, unlike any other in human history. That idea is the United States of America is unique in the world. Virtually every other nation in the world is based on geography, ethnicity, or religion, or some defining feature. We're the only nation in the world, only nation in history built on an idea that we're all created equal. We know the words by heart. We're endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among them, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. That's the idea that generations of service members have fought for. An idea you have sworn an oath to defend. As a nation, we've never fully lived up to that idea, but we've never, ever, ever walked away from it. Our country is counting on you to ensure that that will always be true. As I said when I began, 1% of you defend 99% of the people across this nation. That's why you all deserve a special place in our hearts and in God's heart. May God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Attention. Honor, guard, cover, guard. Attention. Hood, right shoulder, forward. Hood, right, guard. Pass and review. Honor guard, pass in review. Right, backward, face. Right shoulder, right wheel, arch. Forward! Rock time! March!
Distinguished guests, please stand for the service songs of the Armed Forces of the United States. Distinguished guests, this concludes today's farewell tribute in honor of our Commander-in-Chief, Joseph R. Biden, the 46th President of the United States. Please remain at your seats for the departure of the official party.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Corinne.
Hi. I haven't seen you in a while. This is a good day. You all have just heard the terrific news from the president that after 15 months of war, Israel and Hamas have reached a ceasefire and hostage deal. This deal will halt the fighting in Gaza, surge much needed humanitarian assistance to Palestinian civilians who have been living in dire conditions, and it will reunite the hostages, including Americans, with their families after more than 15 months in captivity, experiencing unimaginable suffering. Over the past few days, President Biden spoke with the leaders of Israel, Qatar, and Egypt to continue to push negotiations forward and reach the resolution we announced today. The process has been steered out of the West Wing at the direction of the president by National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and driven to completion through relentless diplomacy by Middle East Coordinator Brett McGurk, who has been actively negotiating day and night in Doha. I will note that Brett is currently in meetings with foreign leaders, and when he emerges, the National Security Council is going to host a background call to answer more of your questions. Secretary Blinken, Director Burns have traveled regularly to the region in recent months and throughout the past year and been in close touch with the key players in the region to advance negotiations forward. President Biden has also directed his team to work closely with the incoming administration to ensure all spoke with one voice on the need to secure a deal. As the president said, we have reached this point because of the pressure Israel has put on Hamas, while with the backing of the United States. Sinwar was killed. Iran's attacks against Israel failed thanks to the support from the United States. We have built a coalition of nations to defend against Houthi attacks. We negotiated a ceasefire after Hezbollah was significantly weakened, and Iran is weaker today than it has been in decades. These developments, which the United States helped shape, have created new conditions in the region, conditions that have led to the outcome we are seeing today. Today, even as we welcome this news, we remember all of the families whose loved ones were killed in Hamas's horrific October 7th attack, and the many innocent people who have been killed in the war that followed. It is long time for the fighting to end and the work of building peace and security to begin. The families of the American hostages are at the forefront of our hearts and minds today. They have been through a terrible ordeal that I cannot begin to imagine. Under this deal, President Biden is determined to finally bring their loved ones home. Now, again, Brett McGurk is the best equipped to answer the specific implementation questions, as he has been directly involved in extensive negotiations, obviously on the ground. In the meantime, we wanted to come out here to speak to the news and also answer any other questions that you may all have. But before I even move forward to taking your questions, I want to do one of those as a former senator, now President Biden would say, a point of personal privilege here. Today is the 537th briefing of the Biden-Harris administration. This is my 306th briefing and the final briefing of the administration. Before I get to all your questions, I just want to say a few things and also just give out a few thank yous, if that's okay. So we had the first briefing of this administration on Inauguration Day, because President Joe Biden wanted to make clear the importance of daily press briefings and the vital role that the press plays in our democracy. President Biden believed in returning the norm of regular briefings and communicating to all of you and the American people about what we are doing and why it was important. The president and all of us in this administration understand that a free press is a cornerstone of our nation. and that the job you do questioning leaders and holding the powerful accountable is important. And as I said during my first briefing, when I took over this role, we might not see eye to eye here in this room all of the time, and that is okay. The give and take that happens here is incredibly healthy, and it is part of our democracy. I have been honored to partake in it with all of you. Well, most of the time I've been honored to take it. But in all seriousness, I also said at the first briefing, I would not be here today if it were not for generations of barrier breaking people before me. I have stood on their shoulders. I benefit from their sacrifices. I have learned excellence, and I am eternally grateful to them. And now I will pass the torch. It is my sincere hope that while I may be the first for many things at this podium behind this lectern, I am not the last. I hope my presence at this podium has served as inspiration to many young girls out there who look at me and look at this job and look at what we've been able to do and have a similar background as me. And hopefully they can follow their dreams and never give up and know that you can achieve great things if you put your heart and mind and be passionate about it, no matter how many barriers you may need to overcome. Progress is not always a straight line, but we all must do our part. In the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose birthday is indeed today, bend it towards justice and pay it forward. I hope that I and many barrier breaking colleagues in this administration have played a small role in doing just that. Standing here and having served in this role for this administration and this president has truly been the honor of a lifetime, one I am grateful for and I will never forget. But it is a job I could never have done alone. And so finally, I do want to say a few thank yous to a few people in this room that I've gotten the pleasure to work with. I want to start off by thanking the best team in the business: Emily, Andrew, Kelly, Robin, Angelo, Jeremy, Sonia, Chloe, Jacob, Chris. You are simply the best. And thank you so much for having my back and doing this job and having the president's back and doing it so well. Truly the best. You work tirelessly, passionately, and with utmost professionalism. You serve the president and this nation well. I am proud to call you all my friends and colleagues. None of this would be possible without all of you. I also want to acknowledge some of the former team members who are with us today. They're spread about here in the back. And you know, as you all know, many of them left to continue to do some impressive work outside and obviously continue to do some work within the administration. Chris Vedant is here as well, who just had a baby girl. Congratulations, Vedant. I had to call you out for that, which is wonderful. You and your wife brought in a beautiful little girl. Alexandra, Silas, Allison, Angela, Natalie. It is all good to see you, and thank you for all that you have done. Thank you for your service. And Jen Saki, who's in the back, thank you so much. I see you, and I'm so grateful that you took the time to be here. And so thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your friendship. And we've missed you around here, and it's so good to see your face. I also want to thank my parents. Growing up as an immigrant family in New York, they never imagined their daughter would be standing here today. They worked day and night to give me every opportunity possible. I can't thank them enough. And to my parents, sorry I didn't become a doctor, but hopefully this is okay. And to my lovely, amazing daughter, you have gone too many nights without me being around, and without me being there for school drop-offs, and without your mama around. And I can't wait to spend more time with you. I call her my pudding, so I can't wait to spend more time with you, pudding. Thank you for your love and support and your patience. And finally, I do want to say thank you to President Biden and First Lady Dr. Biden for this incredible opportunity. As I said earlier, standing at this podium behind this lectern, serving the American people and this administration has been an honor of a lifetime. And I will be forever grateful to the president for his trust and this amazing opportunity. And with that, thank you for your patience all. I appreciate that. With that, Zeke.
Thanks, Corinne. When will the American hostages who are being held by Hamas be released? Will they be released in phase one, or will that come in subsequent phases?
And so the president answered this a little bit when he was speaking earlier today. He mentioned phase one. That's when we're going to be seeing that.
All
And
the American hostages will come out in phase
so there will be more details that Brett McGurk will share right after this briefing. But what I will say is just to give you a little bit of how it will work. So during the first phase, which will begin on Sunday, the fighting will stop. Hostages will begin to be released, and aid will surge into Gaza. During these weeks, the second phase of the deal will continue to be negotiated to bring a permanent end to this war. If negotiations take longer than 6 weeks, the ceasefire will continue to hold as long as negotiations continue. This deal was developed by the president and his team about 8 months ago. Back in May, you heard the president talk about that. So this was the framework. And once he was able to put out the framework, it was endorsed by the world. And so we are certainly, as the president started off in his remarks to the American people, to all of you as well, this is a good day. This is a good day. This is a good step forward. And so Brett McGurk, after this briefing, will have a call to give more details of how this is going to move forward. But again, this is a very good step forward.
And then, as you mentioned, the president announced this framework back in May of last year. It's now a deal has been reached 5 days before this administration's term ends. It will go into effect a day before the next president is sworn in. Is it clear? Does the president want to give some credit to his successor, and that there's a forcing mechanism by that transition is helping push this bill down?
So a couple of things, and you said this in your question to me. This is a framework that the president put forth about 8 months ago, back in May. Again, it was endorsed by the world when he put out this framework. His team has worked, because of the direction of the president, obviously has worked 24/7, night and day to get this done. You're going to hear directly from Brett McGurk, who's been on the ground, who's been in Doha at the direction of the president, obviously with the leadership of National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. And what we see this day as, this is a good day. This is a good day. Hostages are going to be able to go home, including American hostages, to their families. And after 15 months since Hamas did something so unimaginable, launched an attack that was so dreadful. We lost so many lives because of that attack on October 7th. And we have been working around the clock to get this done. And so that's how we look at it. We're going to continue to speak with the Trump transition. You heard even from National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan on Monday talk about how they have been coordinating with the Trump team, keeping them abreast, having regular conversations with them about this. And now we understand that this is going to be implemented by the next team. And so we're going to continue to work with until January 20th, we're going to continue to work closely with the Trump transition team. We have to remember what we have seen from this president over the last 8 months, since 15 months, as we're talking about this particular matter. That's what American president does. That's what they do. And that's what we've seen from this president and his leadership.
And you mentioned that this deal will be implemented by the next president. There's coordination between the White House and the incoming administration. Has the president spoken at all with his successor? And outside of the very brief ceremonial tea that they will have on the morning of the 20th, does he plan on having a more substantive conversation with him about his strategy and the briefing and the relationships that went into this agreement?
Well, Zeke, I will remind you, when he invited the President-elect Trump to the White House, they met for more than 90 minutes. And that's a pretty long time, a significant time to have a heart-to-heart, a bit of a conversation. So that happened, as you know, right after the election. I don't have anything to read out at this time of upcoming conversation or conversations that's happened since their meeting in the Oval Office. But again, the Trump transition team and our team have been in constant communication, having these conversations, keeping them abreast. This president made made a commitment. He made a commitment that he wanted to see a peaceful transfer of power, something that he didn't get 4 years ago. But he wanted to make sure to continue that that tradition and do a peaceful transfer of power. That's what you have seen. He wanted to make sure the transition was effective, efficient, and that's what we have provided. And like I said, we're going to be in close touch with our team and their team in the next couple of days.
And just lastly, on a different topic, you've said the president has been weighing preemptive pardons for all sorts of officials who he fears may be targeted by the incoming administration. Has he made a decision? And given that this is the last briefing, if he were to decide to issue those pardons, could you commit now that there'll be an opportunity to ask questions of the outgoing administration before noon on the 20th about any presidential actions?
I don't have anything to announce. You are correct. You could expect more pardons. I'm not going to go into details of what that's going to look like. It is not unusual for a president to do that, and so you should expect that from this president. I'm not going to make any commitments right now. I'm not going to lock ourselves into a potential. Another opportunity to ask questions about the pardons. But what I can say is stay tuned, and there'll be more to share. And I'm sure the president's going to want to continue to engage with all of you in the next couple of days. Okay, Risha. I haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you.
It's good to see you, and thank you so much for taking our questions so often.
Thank you. I
Really
appreciate
appreciate
it. Thanks, Risha.
So, in terms of implementing the terms of this agreement, how confident is President Biden that the incoming administration will do that? And have they offered any assurances that they will carry them out?
I think there's a commitment to move forward with this deal. I think there's a commitment to make sure that there's an end to this war. Obviously, hostages are going to be coming home. Obviously, we've been in very close touch with the Trump transition. And the president was asked some variation of that question moments ago after he spoke, and he said he is very much indeed confident. So look, we understand this is going to be implemented by the next team, as I just stated. We are going to work closely in close coordination with the Trump team. As the president has said, and I have said also moments ago, we want this to be in one voice, right? I think that's what you have seen in the past couple of weeks, how we have moved forward in one voice. And this is what's important for the hostages, to get them home, to make sure that we're getting that humanitarian aid into Gaza, and to ending this war that has taken a lot of innocent lives. And so that is the commitment. That is the commitment that you can see from us, and that's what the president believes, that he is confident in how we're going to move forward.
Tonight, President Biden is going to be delivering a farewell address. Ahead of that speech, we got a long list of what he views as his greatest accomplishments.
Over 100 pages, I believe, right? Did you read? Did you have every word?
Can you talk about what he thinks his greatest failures are, and whether he will address those tonight to the American public?
So look, this is an important moment for the president. He has been working on the speech, because obviously these are farewell remarks, but he is obviously going to be talking directly to the American people. It is not going to be partisan. This is something that, and not just forget, it's not just about the last 4 years of his administration. He is stepping down from his career, right? More than 50 years of public service that this president has done as senator, as vice president, as president. So you can imagine the president has a lot to say, a lot of thoughts that he wants to share, really touch on the moment that we're in right now. And so that's what you're going to hear from the president. What he wants to do, obviously, is also be positive, talk about what we have been able to do. This is a president that speaks about possibilities and how he sees this country moving forward. And so that's what I could speak to. I'm not going to get ahead of what specifically what the president's going to say. I'm not going to go into line by line, but I can say, and I'd love to say that from here, is stay tuned, and I will leave it there.
And then finally for you, because you've clearly reflected on your role as press secretary, is there anything you wish you had done or said differently during your time?
Well, I will have a lot of time to reflect, right? You're not going to catch me up here, Alicia, today, but I will have a lot of time to reflect on my time here. As you know, this is, and I think you've gotten to know a few press secretaries during your career, this is a job that's nonstop. There's not a lot of time to reflect. It's always, we have to do the job. We have to speak on behalf of the president. We have to make sure that we're communicating with all of you. But what I can say with full heart is that this has been an honor and a privilege to do this job, and I have done it to my best of abilities on behalf of this president, and the best job that I will ever have. I truly believe that.
Thank you.
Okay, Mary.
Thank you, Corinne. You and the president have stressed that this is the framework that he put forward last spring, but the president also made clear it was important to him to work with the incoming administration, that they be speaking in one as one team, as he put it. Even the Qatari prime minister in his remarks personally thanked Steve Witkoff, the incoming administration's Middle East envoy. So do Donald Trump and his team deserve any credit for this?
I mean, look, everyone is going to want some credit. Everybody's going to want some credit. Get that? That's how this goes when something good happens. Not unusual. It is not unusual at all. What I can say is the president got it done, right? That's what I can say. And what I could also say is that, and you said it in your question to me, is that there was a framework that was put forward, and it was put forward by the president back in May 31st of last year, and it was endorsed by the world. And you see a president that has done everything that he can. This is someone who has foreign policy experience, decades of foreign policy experience. He understands what it means to bring people together. He understands what it means to get a deal done. He also said in his remarks how difficult it was to negotiate. Negotiating is incredibly hard, and this wasn't easy, but we got it done. And so, this is someone who speaks from experience. And this is, again, not an easy thing to get done. But as we've said, and I've said multiple times, and I think Jake Sullivan said this obviously recently when he was here on Monday, we were able to work closely with the Trump transition team and coordinate with them. But again, this is a framework that the president put out, and negotiations aren't easy. And this was one of the toughest negotiations that he experienced. And this is something that the president shared with all of you.
And does the president have any plans to talk to the families of the hostages, or has he talked to them today?
So as you know, the president and this administration has been in regular touch with the hostages hostage family, and have obviously always communicated with them that how much we're with them and the work, everything that we're doing to try to bring their loved one home. And we have stayed in constant communication with them. I don't have anything to read out as a call to any of the American hostages or the families at this time. But I can say that the president is, as he said, this is a really good afternoon. Our hearts go out. Our hearts go out to the families who have been waiting 15 months to get their loved ones home. And so this is a big deal. This is a big deal.
And just on a slightly more personal note, on this, your 306th briefing, what advice do you have for your successor?
So I was asked this question, I think, when my successor was announced, and it's pretty much the same, which is, obviously I wish her the best of luck. This is a great job, an amazing opportunity to be standing at this podium behind this lectern, to go back and forth with all of you and speak on behalf of this president, the president of the United States. There's nothing like it. And I hope she enjoys the job. I hope she continues to do this, what we've been doing for the past almost 4 years. And I truly wish her well.
The decision the president made to include Steve Witkoff, how did that come about?
Look, that is, I'm not going to.
Why did the president do it?
Well, look, this goes back to what the president said right after the election, a peaceful transfer of power. Again, something that he didn't get 4 years ago, and wanting to make sure that we had an effective, efficient transition. That's what it looks like. The president is basically leading by example. That's what he's doing. This is a president who understands norms, who understands institutions, and understands how important that is. And he wanted to respect the outcome of the election, the will of the people. And that is what you've seen this president do.
any point did the president think maybe this deal will not be reached on his watch?
The president was hopeful. He was optimistic. This is, as you know, I think you know this, Steve, this is a president that tends to be optimistic and hopeful, but not just that, does the work, leans in, has the experience to get things done, which is what we saw from this president today. I think this is a great example of that. And, you know, he never gave up hope, never gave up hope. And to your point, until the last minute, and we were able to get this done.
Thank you, Karine. This is the second negotiated pause in fighting between Israel and Hamas. The first, as you know, was reached more than a year ago in November 2023. Fighting then resumed just a few weeks later. So what confidence does the U.S. have that this time will be different?
We are going to have confidence, right? I think it's important, stepping back. Negotiations are hard. They're difficult. This was a difficult one. This took multiple sides to come together. The president, as you know, spoke to Qatar, the leader of Qatar, Egypt, and even Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu recently. And this is what diplomacy looks like, having those continued conversations, making sure that voices are heard, and having those tough back and forth. And so we have to be, I think it is important to also be confident in that we can continue to get this done. And, you know, Steve just asked me, why did we bring in Witkoff? Why did we bring in the Trump? This is why, because we know that there has to be a continuation of this. We know that this first phase is about to start. There's going to be a second phase, and it's going to continue. We got to get to a place where this war is done permanently, ends permanently. And so bringing in the Trump administration, coordinating with them, and making sure that they're having the information that we all have, we are hopeful that this will continue.
Under the framework, negotiations for that phase 2 would need to begin within a matter of days after phase 1 begins. What is the White House's view of the commitment of the incoming Trump team and the competency of the Trump team to go through those negotiations and get a phase 2 and beyond?
So I would refer you to the National Security Advisor. Jake Sullivan talked about his relationship and back and forth with his counterpart and how that has gone very well. And so I think that's a good sign of how this is going to certainly move forward. Again, we have been in close coordination with their team, and we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to talk through with them on the next steps. And we're going to, and what you have seen in the past, certainly couple of days, couple of weeks, is one voice coming together in one voice to get this deal done. You know, I think a lot of your questions obviously go to the transition team, and they can certainly answer and speak for themselves. But what I can speak to is what we've been doing, what we have actively done for the past couple of weeks to get this done in unison, to get this done in a way that when the transition happens, we have that confidence that we can move this forward, continue to move this forward.
More light on other officials from the incoming administration that you and your colleagues in the West Wing have been hosting for meetings and conversations, and what those have looked like?
So I can't shed any light on that. What I can say is that we have been working closely with the transition team. We want this to be efficient. We want this to be effective. We are doing this. The president wants to do this on behalf of the American people, and that's what you can count on. I'm not going to list out names of folks who we've been talking to.
And just finally, Karine, a new CNN poll that's out this morning shows that just 36% of U.S. adults say they approve of the way that Biden has handled the presidency. To what do you attribute that?
I mean, look, I've been very careful in talking about polls and not speaking to every poll. I understand this is a CNN poll. What I can speak to is what the president has done to get things done, to get things delivered for the American people. If you think about beating big pharma, if you think about lowering healthcare costs, bringing manufacturing jobs back, or manufacturing back here more broadly, if you think about insulin, capping insulin at $35 a month for seniors, all of those things that I just listed out are very popular with the American people. They are. And that has always been at the forefront of the president's mind. What can he do to deliver for the American people on the needs that they care about. And that's the type of economic policy that he put forward. That's what he wanted to make sure we didn't leave anybody behind. And many communities have felt that they've been left behind. That's why we talk about building an economy from the bottom up, middle out. That's been his focus. And you can see the results. More than 16 million jobs created. When you think about more than 20 million small businesses started, people don't start small businesses unless they feel confident about the economy. And those two go hand in hand. And so, look, we're going to continue to do the work. Continue to make sure that we do everything possible in the last couple of days to deliver for the American people. And that's the president's focus. Let's not forget, when he walked in, there was a pandemic, once in a generation pandemic. And he turned that around. And so the president's going to address the American people later today, farewell address, and he'll certainly have a lot to say. Go ahead, Jojo.
Thanks, Rain. Yeah.
Last time I'll be able to say that.
I know. Thanks for taking questions these last couple of years. President-elect Trump, in a social media statement today, said the ceasefire deal could only have happened as a result of his election victory. What's your response to that assessment? Do you agree with that? Disagree?
Look, I think the president was asked some version of that question. I think that was the first question that he got after he spoke. And I said this, everyone's going to want to take credit. That's how these things work. But the fact of the matter is, in order for this deal to have been done, there needed to be a framework. The person who provided that framework was President Joe Biden. And we have been working on this for some time. It didn't just come together in the last couple of days. It didn't just start the last couple of days. And so, and not only that, he put together a framework. It got endorsed by the world. That's not an easy thing to do. And, and so that's part of the first thing that he was able to do. The second thing that he was able to do was support Israel. And by supporting Israel, that badly weakened Hamas. You saw what happened to Hamas's leadership and what we were able to do to the backers of Hamas. And so all of those things mattered. Our support and what we were able to do, how this president stepped in matters. And now we are in a situation where we're going to pass this over to the incoming administration. A lot of this is going to be implemented by the incoming administration. That is why we worked very closely with the incoming administration. And again, that is what an American president makes.
And secondly, President Biden's going to be spending his final full day of his presidency in Charleston, South Carolina. Can you discuss what he's going to be doing there?
We'll have more to share on that. And I don't want to dive into that right now, but we'll certainly have more to share on what that will look like his last couple of days. Get Karen.
Just two quick ones. Does the president intend to leave a letter for President-elect Trump before he leaves office, as Trump did for him?
Well, I guess we'll see. We'll see. I don't have anything. That's going to be up to the president. I don't have anything on that. But it's a good question. I'm curious too.
And after Monday, what is the president's plan? What are he and the first lady doing when they leave Washington?
And we'll have more to share on that as well.
Thank you for serving as press secretary and answering our questions for the last couple of years. A couple quick ones just to clarify some things, probably yes or no. I know you have no readout of any calls between President Biden and President-elect Trump. Just declaratively, can you say, no, there has not been a call between them or in any of the last 2 weeks on this specific topic of Israel?
Look, I have not asked that question, so I don't want to get ahead of myself here. You always give me homework, Peter. Every time I come, you always tell me, can you come back and tell? Okay. 24/7, yeah.
If I can ask you briefly about tonight's address, if you can take us into that room, who is going to be in attendance? I trust the First Lady. Will family members be there? Who else will be there? And is there anything else surrounding it?
It's a very good question. We'll have more color for you later on in the evening. What I can say is the president is certainly very much looking forward to this moment, speaking directly to the American people. It's not every day you get to do an Oval Address. He gets to do another Oval Address, obviously his last one in prime time. And so we will certainly have more color of who's going to be in the room and what that will look like as we get closer.
And then last question, I'll leave it to my colleagues, is it's tradition that at the end of the year, the president would do a news conference in advance of departure. The president would take questions on a variety of different topics. What was the decision making? Why did this president decide not to do either of those before his departure?
I think the president, especially in the past couple of days, has been very much engaging with all of you, taking questions. He did it today. He himself wanted to stand up a moment to talk about the economy, but also take your questions just a couple of days ago. That is something that he wanted to do. And your colleagues let me finish. Your colleagues asked some really important questions that he was able to answer, an array of questions. And what I can say is I don't have anything to preview at this time, but certainly he's going to continue to engage with all of you. We have been, he's been very much involved in going back and forth with all of you in the past couple of days, and that is something that he wanted to make sure that he did that.
Were there any concerns about his public performance in a setting like that?
I think the issue that I have with that question, Peter, is that he literally did a press conference with all of you days ago with some of your colleagues and took multiple.
That's different, than an hour-long press conference. That's why I asked the question.
Look, but he took questions. He took questions on an array of issues, went back and forth, and he took questions today. He's been pretty consistent over the past couple of days in doing that. And that shows his performance, that those are questions that he doesn't know what you guys are going to ask, and he takes them and he answers them. And I think that is something that is important to him. This goes back to the freedom of the press, understanding how important you all are to our democracy, and understanding how having that continuation of a back and forth, even when we don't agree, is important. And so I'm pretty sure you all will continue to hear from him in the last couple of days of his administration, and he certainly looks forward to it.
Corinne, we're sort of dancing around who gets to take credit for this deal.
No one's dancing around here.
The State Department briefed our colleagues that President Trump was critical in getting this deal over the line. Do you not agree with that statement?
Look, I'm not going to speak to a random person. I don't know who this person is. I'm not going to. Oh, what I can say is, look, obviously Matt Miller will speak for himself. What I can say is there are steps that were taken here that is really important and critical, and that started with this president starting a framework that was agreed upon by the world back in May. And that was because of this president. That was because he was able to lay out his thoughts, his thinking on how to move forward with this negotiation. What I said before, this is someone who understands foreign policy as I'm talking about the president. He understands how difficult it is, and this was not an easy one. And so he has the experience. He was able to get that going, to get that started. So this has been going on for some time. It has. I mean, that's just the reality of it. That is just the facts of it. Have we been coordinating and working closely with the incoming Trump administration, their transition team? Yes. And we've been very forthcoming about that. But the fact of the matter is, it took someone who has the experience that this president had to get this going, to get this moving, to understand what negotiations look like. And that's what this president was able to bring to the table. And it got done under his watch. It got done today.
And then secondly, obviously, this is a really big day on the foreign policy and national security front. This is your last briefing, or the administration's last briefing. Is there a reason why John Kirby isn't here to take your questions?
So look, I just mentioned that Brett McGurk is going to be holding, and National Security Council is holding up a call. I think that's going to be really important. They will talk more about the implementation of this. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan was just here 2 days ago on Monday, and I think kind of laid out a really good framework for all of this, the thinking process, how this was going to move forward. And Brett McGurk, he is on the ground. He has all of the information. He has been there at the direction of this president, certainly with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan leading that effort. And so he's going to have a lot more information than any of us here will have, because he's been on the ground, understanding, working with the negotiators and understanding how this process has worked. So That's how this works. Go ahead.
You said that you wish your successor luck. Have you had any extensive conversations with her
No,
about how this job is done?
I haven't, but I'm not the only White House press secretary or soon to be former White House press secretary out there. So I'm sure there are many people for her to connect with and speak with, but I have not had a conversation with her. Yeah, Jen.
Thanks, Corinne. How many Americans are going to be in the first tranche, and when will they start coming out?
It's a good question. That's why Brett McGurk is going to be holding this National Security Council call. He will have all of that information. The president even said the same thing when he was asked a similar question, that we will have more details to share. And so the National Security Council, Brett McGurk, will share that with all of you, hopefully momentarily once this is done.
I'm confused on why we're having the last briefing of the administration on what's been one of the defining wars of this presidency without being able to answer those questions.
I just said he's going to hold a press call and he'll take your questions on that. Okay. I think that's important to hear directly from the person who's on the ground. I think that's an important thing to do.
Okay. Right. We were under the impression that there were folks here in the building who had those answers who could tell us.
National Security Council is holding up a call so that Brett McGurk can get on that call and take your questions.
Okay. Why is it that you seem unwilling to extend any credit to Trump for this deal? Couldn't he just have said, hold off until I'm in office?
What I will say is that what we know to be true, what we know this process, how it has moved over the past 8 months, this is a deal that happened under the framework that this president put forward and was endorsed by the world. And this is also an administration that has had certainly the support, the back of Israel that helped denigrate Hamas, their military severely, weaken them. And we created, because of also doing that, we created the conditions for this deal. That is what has happened over the last 8 months. And we have talked closely, worked closely, coordinated closely with the incoming administration. And that is how we've been able to get to this point. And the reason we were able to do that, having that conversation with the transition team, is because this president believed in the importance of having a peaceful transfer of power, right? Of having a transition that worked for the American people and had the American people at the forefront in trying to make sure that we got this done.
I guess we've heard variations of that answer through the briefing, but I guess more plainly, I'm wondering, if you'll just say your view, which seems to be that Trump gets no credit.
I've shared my view. I don't have anything else to share. I've shared how we got to this point. The president shared that moments ago. He laid out in very succinct way on how we got to this point. I've talked about Brett McGurk, who's on the ground talking to negotiators, has been there working at the direction of this president, the leadership, obviously, of the National Security Advisor. This has been something that has been in the works for months, way before November. That is just how this has worked. I'm not here to talk about the transition. I'm not here to talk about who gets credit, not get credit. I'm here to talk about what this president has been able to do. And here's what is also incredibly important here. We're going to get hostages who are going to go home to their family. After 15 months of, I don't even want to think the horror that they have gone through. I can't even imagine it. And I think that matters. I mean, we're going back and forth about credit, but people are going to go home to their families. And that is so important. And hopefully the phases will continue and we'll get to an end of war here. And that is important. And let's not forget, increase that humanitarian aid into Gaza, because there are people there who need that aid and the assistance. I'm going to move on. Go ahead. No, I'm going to wait. No.
How will you grade yourself on your goal of being the most transparent administration?
Go ahead. I've taken like 3 questions. I'm going to move on. Go ahead.
No answer there?
Oh, go ahead. I've already taken 3 of your questions. I'm going to make sure some of your colleagues get an opportunity as well.
Could you respond to the report released by the special counsel who prosecuted Hunter Biden? Specifically, he talked about Biden's claims that his son was unfairly targeted and said the president's characterizations are incorrect based on the facts in this case, and on a more fundamental level, they are wrong. He also said that politicians who attack the decisions of career prosecutors as politically motivated when they disagree with the outcome of a case undermine the public's confidence in our criminal justice system.
So, I mean, a couple things there. Let's not forget why the president came to his conclusion, how he got to this point of pardoning his son. And he talked about the circumstances of this prosecution and how out of norm they were. And let's not forget there were legal experts that agreed with this president, who shared that conclusion of this president. And one of those experts is a former prosecutor, as you all know, Attorney General Eric Holder, and he was very clear. I just want to quote him. No U.S. attorney would have charged this case given the underlying facts. Had his name been Joe Smith, the resolution would have been fundamentally and more fairly a declination. Pardon warranted. And if you look at what happened here and you look at paying your taxes, the vast majority of people who don't pay their taxes on time are not charged with criminal penalties. They're just not. They pay their penalties and fees, and that's what Hunter Biden did. And so the president wasn't alone in this, in making that. When he made that determination, he had legal experts who also agreed with how he, making this decision on pardoning his son, Hunter Biden.
No concern that he undermines the public perception of the justice system.
I just answered that question. I don't have anything else for you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, great. Thanks. I know that you said you don't have details on what the president will be doing on Sunday, but can you expound on why he chose to spend, his last day in office in South Carolina?
We'll have more to share. I don't want to get ahead of that. We'll have more to share. And why South Carolina?
Last thing.
Yeah.
Has the president spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu, or does he plan to do so in the coming days?
Well, as you know, he recently just spoke to the Prime Minister, and if we have more calls to read out, we certainly will do that. I know I have to start wrapping up. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Karine. On Monday, President Biden said he was more optimistic than ever about the future. Isn't he afraid or concerned that part of his legacy could be or is about to be erased by the incoming president?
I mean, look, when I answered this question about, I think it was a polling question from Kayla, I also talked about in my answering that question, how popular some of the things that the president has done. CHIPS and Science Act, bipartisan infrastructure legislation, the PACT Act, and even the provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act. And I talked about the insulin being the insulin at $35 a month for seniors. Those are things, all of those things that I just laid out are popular with the American people. And that is something that the incoming administration has to think about. Republicans on the other side of Pennsylvania has to think about. These are things that are incredibly popular. Some of them, the bipartisan infrastructure legislation, CHIPS and Science Act, the PACT Act, were done in a bipartisan way. And so to undo those successes, some of the things, again, popular with the American people, that's something that they have to seriously think about. And what we have done in those historic pieces of legislation that obviously is now law will have lasting effects on people's lives, lasting effect. So he's very confident about that.
And one about foreign policy, because President Biden said his presidency restored the U.S. credibility in the world. Jen Psaki actually said that in her first briefing here, that he was going to do this. But when we talk to foreign leaders or diplomats around, many say that the inconsistency of the U.S. foreign policy is making it harder to work together and really trust that the U.S. can be a reliable
Wait, say that
so
last
what do
part
you
again.
tell
The
them?
inconsistency, you said?
Yeah, of the U.S. foreign policy. Make it hard to work and trust that U.S. can be a reliable ally. So what message do you-
why are they saying that? What's the inconsistency?
Well, one administration come and undo a lot of Cuba and Paris and all, and then you put it back, and now again it's about to be You know,
I mean,
on the
look,
ground, so-
I'm not going to get into what the next administration is going to do, not going to do. What I can talk about is what the president wanted to make sure and that he got done in his 4 years here, which is restore the reputation of the United States, which he was able to do, get things done on behalf of the American people, and make sure that we really mended our relationships with our partners and allies. And that's what you were able to do. You don't expand NATO if it wasn't for this president and his relationships and his experience, right? You don't support Ukraine the way that it was supported by more than 50 countries, the way that it was able to get what it needed to really be on the ground. Remember, Kyiv was supposed to fall within days. That didn't happen. That didn't happen because of this president's leadership. I'm not going to get into what the next president's going to do or not do. And let's not forget today. Today was a big day in the foreign policy space to get this hostage deal done. Hostages are going to go home. We're going to be able to get humanitarian aid surged into Gaza, and we're hopefully going to end this war. And that is incredibly important. All right, guys, I have to go. Thank you. Yep.
Have you been in touch with Caroline yet?
I was
Were
just
you
asked this
able to-
question. I was just asked this question. I have not been in touch with her, but I certainly wish her luck. Thanks, everybody.
Why have you not been in touch with her?
Come talk to me in the back.
United States, accompanied by the Executive Director of Joining Forces, Ms. Sheila Casey.
Okay, I hope I can get through this. Good morning, everyone. Oh, good, everybody's awake. It is both an honor and a deeply personal privilege to stand here today as the Executive Director of Joining Forces, and more importantly, as a proud military spouse of 41 years and a military mom. This initiative holds a very special place in my heart, and I am so grateful to share this moment with each of you, because you are the soul and the spirit of Joining Forces. Like so many of you in this room, I know firsthand the unique joys and challenges of military life, the pride of service and community, the strength it requires to face uncertainty, and the resilience that we draw from one another. I remember the first time I navigated a deployment, the worry, the juggling of responsibilities, and the isolation that sometimes crept in. But what I also remember is the unwavering support of fellow military spouses, the laughter shared in the toughest moments, and the profound sense of purpose that binds us all together. Don't you start, Steve. It was that shared experience, that deep understanding of what military families endure, that inspired me to step into this role with Joining Forces. When Dr. Biden invited me to be part of this mission, it took me about 3 seconds to say yes. And I would also have the opportunity to support someone I knew was absolutely committed. Dr. Biden understands us in a way that is both rare and remarkable. As a military mom herself, she knows the sacrifices that our families make and the strength that it takes to keep going. She has listened to our stories, walked in our shoes, and turned her empathy into action. To Dr. Biden, joining forces is more than just a White House initiative. It is a commitment to meeting the needs of military and veteran families, caregivers, and survivors, ensuring access to meaningful employment, quality education for our children, and the vital health and well-being resources. It is a promise that our nation sees us, values us, and stands with us. And it is also a testament to the tireless leadership and unwavering support of Dr. Biden. She has spent her life advocating for others as an educator, a military mom, and as our First Lady. She brings a warmth and sincerity to this work that is truly inspiring. Her passion for this community is not just something she speaks about it. It's something she lives. Whether she's visiting a base, meeting with spouses, or championing policy changes, she approaches care and an open heart stage. I hope you will join me in recognizing not just her title, but the incredible woman behind it. Someone who has made it her mission to ensure that no military family feels invisible and that each of us has the support that we need to thrive. So please join me in welcoming my boss, my friend, and our First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, please.
Sheila, thank you. You know, I first met Sheila when she was a senior military spouse, when General Casey was the Chief of Staff of the Army. And I always learned so much and drew comfort and strength from you, Sheila. Our Joining Forces Executive Director, Rory Brocious, had been a part of this initiative from the early days, and she led us forward from 2021 to 2023 with grace and compassion and determination. So when it came time for a new executive director, I knew exactly who to call. Because for any Joining Forces issue, we'd always call Sheila and ask for her thoughts and her guidance. So I invited Sheila for tea without telling her what I had in mind. And she walked out as our new executive director. Sheila, when I asked you to come lead Joining Forces, you didn't hesitate. As you said, it was like 4 seconds, like, yes, I'll do it. And everyone in this room is so grateful for your leadership and your kindness and your friendship. Thank you. I love you. So to everybody else, welcome to the White House. And I think this may be the last time I get to say that from this stage. So this is the final event I will host here as First Lady. And I knew I wanted to celebrate you, the advocates, business leaders, senior spouses, and so many military families who have been with Joining Forces. It's because of you that we've made so much progress on employment and entrepreneurship, on military child education, on health and well-being for the whole family. Just 1% of our nation serves in uniform, so that the other 99% may live in freedom. We owe it to them to make sure that they and their families have the support that they need. So in 2011, First Lady Michelle Obama and I launched Joining Forces. And we made a commitment that we wouldn't tell the military families what they needed. We would ask them about the challenges they faced and do everything that we could to lighten the load of all that they carried. And after the Obama-Biden administration, I knew that I had to continue this work. And one of the first things I did when Joe was sworn in as president was establish Joining Forces back in the White House. With an executive director serving as a commissioned officer, a senior member of the White House team. It was important that everyone understand that this work was critical to the Biden-Harris administration. We saw a new opportunity to write a new chapter for this initiative. And along with so many of you in this room, we were determined to put an end to those excuses we'd often hear when trying to break down barriers for this community. Things like, oh, it's too complicated, or we don't know how. We came together to say military families deserve as much commitment from us as they give to us.
Hear, hear.
Like the spouses who work for the federal government. You told me how hard it was for you to keep those jobs when you moved. And in 2023, Joe signed the most far-reaching executive order ever on federal employment for military and veteran spouses to expand opportunities to help you further the careers you have all worked so hard to build. And believe me, I understood that. And over the years, I've met with so many children of military families. You know, they might not wear a uniform, but they serve too. So I brought military kids to the White House for, I think, every holiday celebration, displaying their art on the public tour so that everyone could learn about their experiences, and increased support for military caregiving children, which was so important. Parents, you explained how tough it is to piece together childcare that's affordable, especially as you move from base to base. And that's why the Biden administration lowered the cost of childcare for military families and expanded parental leave for service members. And this past fall, we also brought universal pre-K to military bases around the world. And the moms and dads of military kids with disabilities, you told me how your kids move to new schools, but their individualized education programs don't move as easily. So I understood that as a teacher. The federal government and the nonprofit and private sectors are working to pilot seamless and secure data transfers of those specialized service. That way, military kids and all students who move frequently will be closer to getting the services they need on the first day at a new school. The military community is the one that the Bidens are humbled and proud to serve, to call our own. You know, at just 17 years old, my father decided that he wanted to fight in World War II. And back then, and I guess it's the same today, he was too young to enlist at 17. So he had to get my grandmom's permission to join. So she signed the papers, and my father served as a Navy signalman in the Pacific. And his service shaped his life and mine as well. And I'm proud that joining forces is part of what has defined my time at the White House. It's been the honor of my life to serve as First Lady and to support the military community that defends our nation and keeps it strong. For every new recruit who takes the oath to protect and defend the Constitution, for every parent who knows the swell of fear and pride seeing their son or daughter in uniform, like I have, for every military child who saves up all their stories to share during those few precious phone calls with the parents serving overseas. You all know this. We must make sure that America lives up to their devotion and the sacrifices that they make, the sacrifices that all of you make every day. With all of my heart, thank you for your service. May God bless your families. I love you. Thank you.
Hey folks, it's going to be quick because I got to be downstairs, but thank you very much for being here. This morning, the deal that I first put forward last May for the Middle East has finally come to fruition. The ceasefire has gone into effect in Gaza, and today we're seeing hostages being released. 3 Israeli women held against their will in the dark tunnels for 470 days. 4 more women will be released in 7 days. 3 additional hostages every 7 days thereafter, including at least 2 American citizens in this first phase. We pray for them and their families, for they're going to be a long recovery ahead. By the 16th day of the deal, talks will begin in the second phase. This phase includes the release of Israeli soldiers and a permanent end of the war without Hamas in power or able to threaten Israel. Hundreds of trucks are entering Gaza as I speak. They're carrying assistance for civilians who suffered enormously from the war that Hamas started on October 7, 2023, nearly 15 months ago. Today alone, we anticipate several hundred trucks will enter the Gaza Strip as I'm speaking. And after so much pain, destruction, loss of life, today the guns in Gaza have gone silent. This was the deal that I outlined for the world back in May 31st. Many of you covered it at the time. It was endorsed overwhelmingly by folks around the world, including the UN Security Council, unanimously endorsed the deal, and developed in coordination with Egypt, Qatar, and Israel. I've worked in foreign policy for decades, and this is one of the toughest negotiations I've been part of. Many of you who follow these negotiations will attest that the road to this deal has been not easy at all, and a long road. But we've reached this point today because of the pressure Israel built on Hamas, backed by the United States. Some said my policy of a firm support for Israel was relentlessly pursuing diplomacy, risked drawing America into a wider war in the region. I listened to those voices, many of whom I respected a great deal, but I concluded abandoning the course I was on would not have led us to the ceasefire we're seeing today. But instead, it would have risked the wider war in the region that so many feared. Now the region has been fundamentally transformed. Hamas's longtime leader, Sinwar, is dead. Hamas sponsors in the Middle East have been badly weakened by Israel, backed by the United States. Hezbollah, one of Hamas's biggest backers, was significantly weakened on the battlefield, and its leadership was destroyed. Even as we worked for diplomatic solutions in Lebanon, we provided ongoing assistance and supported Israel's military campaign against Hezbollah, including its efforts to take out the terror infrastructure along the border between Israel and Lebanon. Israel's campaign was extremely successful, so much so that by the end of November, the United States had brokered a ceasefire in Lebanon. Hezbollah did what it said it would never do. It cut its deal and abandoned Hamas. And today, in Lebanon, there's finally a new president and prime minister, both of whom support a sovereign Lebanon without Hezbollah running the show or playing any part in it. The Assad regime next door in Syria is gone, removing Iran's ready access to Lebanon. Iran is in the weakest position in decades after the U.S. military helped defend Israel from Iranian missiles and supported Israel's military response inside Iran. Just look across the region. In Lebanon, there's an opportunity for a future free from the grip of Hezbollah. In Syria, a future free from the tyranny of Assad. For the Palestinian people, a credible path to a state of their own. And for the region and the future normalization and integration of Israel with all its Arab neighbors, including Saudi Arabia, who I've spoken with. You know, we've had many difficult days since Hamas began this terrible war. We've encountered roadblocks and setbacks, but we haven't given up. And a special thanks to my team, particularly Brett McGurk, who many of you know, who spent weeks and months working nonstop to reach this deal. Many of those weeks and months out of the country. Today's ceasefire in Gaza and the release of hostages is a result of a principled and effective policy that we presided over for months. And we got here without a wider war in the Middle East than many predicted. And now it falls on the next administration to help implement this deal. I was pleased to have our team speak as one voice in the final days. It was both necessary and effective and unprecedented. But success is going to require persistence and continuing support for our friends in the region and the belief in diplomacy backed by deterrence. So as we reflect on the news from Gaza today, we also remember all the victims of this war. We're mindful that the pursuit of a lasting peace, while never easy or quick, must always be our calling. So thank you all for listening. May God bless you all. May God protect our troops. I'm looking forward to this deal being fully implemented. And I'm sorry I'm not going to take any questions now because I'm waiting. There's a whole congregation waiting for me. And I'm sure the remainder of the day I'll have an opportunity to speak with you. Thank you very much.
Anything about the condition of the hostages that were released today and the others?
Yes, I've just got a call saying the 3 are released into Gaza to the out of the hands of their captors, and they appear to be in good health. But it's early to tell. They may be across the border out of the Gaza Strip into Israel now. I'm not certain. Thank you.
Sir, any concerns about Hamas regrouping?
No.
Will you remain involved in the deal as it moves forward?
No way out. Proud of the deal.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Russian authorities say they have arrested a Wall Street Journal reporter on charges of espionage.
Russians protesting Putin's invasion face harsh consequences, including...
I give you my orders of Biden. We're not going to give up until we get them home. All of them. All of them. Until you lose a part of your family, you don't really appreciate what it means. There's no feeling worse than not knowing whether someone you love and adore and need you're ever going to see again. I'm reminded that building personal relationship with world leaders matters.
It took a lot of time. It was almost a year and a half after the first contact. Together with our allies, with the United States, we persisted.
Chancellor Schultz of Germany, he made it happen. He had to release a prisoner in Germany. He met Jill at the Olympics, and he said, "I'm doing this for your husband."
Chancellor Schultz told us he was brought to yes by a man he considered a friend.
It is not an easy decision.
But it mattered. I'm indebted to the Chancellor for what he did. We did it for them. They did it for us. That's what alliances are about.
Instead of judging people or countries based on their size or strength, he's judging us based on trustworthiness. And that's really something that distinguishes him. Trust and friendship can really bring impossible to become possible. And that is something that can be really applied to what President Biden has been doing the last